Awesome. So super excited to have you all here today. We are going to go ahead and get started. As I am chatting, feel free to just drop your name in the chat, and what organization you're with and what brings you to the conversation today. What are you most interested in? Do you have any questions? Just feel free to drop that information directly in the chat. I am LaTrinda Sherrill, and I am the CS for PGH lead for Remake Learning. I also lead our STEAM ecosystem work, and I'm super excited to be here today. If any of you follow the national CS4All work, today is actually the day that commitments are being announced from all across the country about how people, even within a pandemic and during a pandemic, people are still making commitments to computer science education and learning. We started CS for Inclusion last year just as an opportunity to chat about what happens when we think about equity strategies related to inclusion, real pathways to connect young people to CS beyond just the content, and thinking about the ways and the processes that we need to be mindful of before they even, can come into the classroom and even get comfortable with what they're learning. And so this year we've set up a few speakers to speak to each of you about strategies that we're learning and we're seeing along the way that are helping to aid in the computer science pipeline. And so throughout the conversation, please feel free to tweet, use the hashtag CS4Inclusion or CS4PGH on social media. Here are some ways to, of course, tag us, get in contact with us, find out additional information about us, and then also feel free to email me if you have additional questions as well. And we are excited. We have Miss Muriel Alim here today. She is a senior program manager with the National Math and Science Initiative, and they've done a ton of work in the Pittsburgh Public School District, in neighboring districts, really trying to think about what is the pathway to ensure that students who take advanced placement courses are supported, and what does that look like, and how do you support educators in that way? And so we're going to have some reflections today from a couple of school districts, and I'm super excited to hear about what they're learning. We are recording the conversation just in case you need to leave a little early. It will be available for you. Additionally, if you have questions throughout the conversation, again, just leave them in the chat, and when it's time, we'll pose those questions to our panelists, okay? And so, Muriel, and I think Kevin and a number of folks, are you guys ready for me to turn it over to you?
I'm ready.
Sure.
Good stuff. All right, so I'm going to go on mute and turn it over to you.
Thank you. LaTrinda, are you able to turn my video on?
Yes, give us 1 second. And I can also stop sharing my screen.
Okay. All right. Let's see. I don't know. It's not allowing me to show my video yet, so I'll just start talking though.
Okay, yeah, and we'll work on that. Give us one.
Okay, no worries, no worries. Hi, everyone. I want to start by thanking LaTrinda and Ali and the entire Remake Learning team for inviting me to take part in this critically important series. My name is Muriel Alim, and I come to you as a Pittsburgh native who matriculated through a single-sex school in the late 70s and early 80s. This school made it a priority to educate and empower girls to use their voice and take a seat at the table where decisions are being made. My teachers and my administrators knew that the best way to make this happen was to expose me and my classmates. Thank you. Let's try. Ah, there we go. Oops. Let's try that again. All right, there. Hi. My teachers and administrators knew that the best way to make that happen was to expose me and my classmates to the most current inventions and socially transformative philosophies of the time. So twice a week, we met in our small computer lab in the corner of the middle school with a box screen in front of us. We'd hook up the mouthpiece of the phone that was in that room to this contraption that I learned was a modem. This modem made this ringing and dinging sound till it somehow connected to CMU down the street. I was like, what the heck? It was amazing. We would then begin typing this weird language that I learned was called DOS to make math problems. Again, what the heck? We could not forget, though, to stick this little plastic disc inside before we left the room so that we didn't have to redo all the work that we did the next time we came in. Sharing the philosophy to expose girls to the latest and greatest, for Christmas, my mother bought me a Commodore computer. She couldn't tell me anything. A few years later, it was an Apple with the real floppy disk, like floppy disk, right? That Apple got me through my final years of high school and actually through all 4 years of college. I would love coming home to teach my older sister and brother that DOS language that I learned. It was really cool. I share this story because it was my introduction to computer science. And I know it was not the typical experience my peers who attended other schools with fewer resources. It was not the experience of most girls who didn't have the privilege of attending an all-girls school with equity as a core value. Fast forward to 2020. And despite the proliferation of smartphones and smart devices all around, we still have very few women who are advancing in computer science careers. The organization Girls Who Code reports that in 1995, 37% of computer scientists were women. Today, it's only 24%. The percent will continue to decline if we do nothing. We know that the biggest drop off of girls in computer science is between ages 13 and 17. And that's why we're here today. NMSI, the National Math and Science Initiative, has the pleasure to partner with school systems who have the shared goal to increase access to and an achievement in rigorous STEM courses, to increase the pool of students prepared for STEM majors and careers, including teaching. The three arms of programming that we provide are our College Readiness Program, which supports AP teachers and students in high schools, as well as building and district administrators with the development of strategic action plans that are related to that access and achievement. Are laying the foundation professional development for pre-K through 12 teachers to help them increase rigor in math and science and to align the curriculum to those advanced academics. And then our You Teach program, where we partner with colleges and universities in the United States to support pre-service teachers to build their capacity to teach STEM when they enter the classroom. Today, I've invited some of our partners to share their experience as a NMSI partner. I'm not quite sure who all is here. I know that Kevin is here. So I'd like to start with Kevin. And so Kevin Gallagher is going to introduce himself. And Kevin, and each of you, as I call on you, I'd like for you to introduce yourself with your name, the school and district that you represent, as well as your role there. And then if you could just take a minute and tell us what has driven you to advance this concept or this idea of computer science in your school and your district. Kevin?
Hi, everybody. Kevin Gallagher, Keystone Oaks High School in Pittsburgh. This is our 4th year with computer science. We currently offer Computer Science Discoveries, AP Computer Science Principles, and AP Computer Science A. Computer Science A is in its third year. The other courses are in their fourth year. We started out with 25 students the first year in 2 sections, and now we've increased to over 135 students, and my whole day is filled with computer science. Formerly a math teacher, my last math class is AP Statistics. So, we started out the AP program went from 5 to 50 to 80 in 3 years. Our first year had 6 females and 1 minority out of 25 students, and now we are at 65 females and 45 minorities, which is we're at about half. Half of my students are females, and a third of my students are minorities, which is pretty extraordinary considering that our minority population is just about 14%. So we're running at least 2.5 times what our school is, our overall makeup. Our future plans are for to branch out and add additional courses in a data science format. So add in statistics and statistics with Python. I mentioned I'm a former math teacher, and I branched out from the math department. And what that has allowed me to do is to do a lot of the things that I always wanted to do as far as the teaching goes. So this finally answers Muriel's question, is that, it allows students to be creative in their problem solving. It allows them to personalize their learning to whatever they want to do. As far as, if they like to learn about sports, they can do computer science in a sports realm. If they like a more creative and art side, they can branch out with art. They can branch out from a math standpoint. They can branch out from a science standpoint. Whatever their interests are, it allows you to customize their learning, on a daily basis. So, we have a good time in computer science. I allow the students to be creative, and that's what continues to want me to grow as a teacher and have my students grow, because they can learn the way they want to learn, and it's not something that in a way that they have to do. It's the way in a way that they want to do.
Okay. And Kevin, I think I don't know. You were going to try to maybe have a couple of your students join us. Are they able to?
Yes, they are here, and I figured out that they are under my account. So I will introduce them. First, Amina is here. So I'll let Amina tell a little about herself and what she likes about computer science so far.
Great, thank you.
Hi, I'm Amina Suleiman, and I am a junior at Keystone Oaks High School. And my favorite part, like what I really like learning about, things I like learning about in computer science, is just being able to be creative and try different things and learn different things about the internet or how the computer functions.
Thank you. Amina, do you mind if I ask you a quick follow-up question to that?
Yeah.
Yeah, so Amina, when would you, let me ask you this, would you consider yourself at this stage a computer scientist?
Probably not, because I'm still like learning all the basics and I'm still learning and stuff, so.
Okay. Do you see computer science potentially being in your future?
Yeah, if not something in a STEM major, definitely, so.
Okay, great. Thank you, Amina. Thank you. Here's Kevin. Oh, you're muted though. There we go. All right.
Here. Hi, everybody.
There we go.
And we also have with us Afshana. If she wants to unmute, tell us a little bit about herself and why she likes computer science so far.
Hi, everyone. I'm Afshana, and I've been interested in computer science since 9th grade. But back in Virginia, like the class I took didn't really amplify my interests. And I saw a lot of YouTube videos, which kind of overwhelmed me because everything was packed in a video. And this year with my teacher, I think he takes it by step, teaching everything. And we've been learning JavaScript. And one of my favorite part was making the app where I made like a yoga and a meditation with 3 screens. And I loved like creating it like as I was designing it on a Squid, and like making the code come to life like after spending hours on it at home too. So yeah, I think that was my favorite part of computer science.
Tell me a little bit more about what you mean by making it come alive. What does that mean for you?
So there were, as I was coding the screens and like what button, like what happens when you click this image or a button, I was getting like a lot of steps wrong, and then I would have to revise it, and then maybe change the design up a little bit, make everything like fit into the screen. So through that process, I really enjoyed it because I got to like be more creative as I like switched up the design or something like that. So like making it run and making it like seeing that like the videos are working, the sounds are working, all the information is coming alive as the program ran was really fun to see.
Right. Thank you. Amina and Afshan, are you going to be able to stay with us for a little bit?
Afshana has to catch the bus.
Okay.
Okay. I'm gonna have to leave at like 2:35 because I have to catch the bus.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, hopefully we'll, if you're still on, I do want to ask each of you a few more questions if you're still available. If not, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Kevin Hairston is also on the line. Kevin is a teacher at Pittsburgh Public. Kevin, if you could come off and introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about, your school, where you are, your role that you teach there, and then what drives you or what has driven you to advance this computer science in your school and in the district? Because I know that you also have had a role in, district-wide, to advance computer science.
Okay, hi, can you hear me?
We can hear and see you. Thank you.
Okay, great. I wasn't sure. And so, by the way, David Hairston.
David, sorry, I apologize.
Yeah, right. It was funny because my middle name is Kevin, and I was like, I didn't tell you guys my middle name, I don't think. But so, yeah, David Hairston, teacher at Brashear High School. And I've been teaching computer science for, this will be my 5th year, right? It's an unusual year, but this will be my 5th year. I got into it originally because I was a math teacher, right? And I was asked to do the AP CSA course. And I was like, yeah, I can do that. And I wouldn't mind doing it. Went to some trainings and things like that. And then I just started to notice that I was liking this a lot more than the math class. They're very similar. The math discipline requires meticulousness. You have to be, kind of exacting, precise to be able to get kind of like the right solutions and right answers. So that's the discipline of math. Computer science has a little bit of, or programming has a little bit of that in it, but it also has an added aspect that allows you to be more creative. It's more like you can be an artist, and it's hard to be an artist in math. You have to get to a very high level to be an artist in math, but with computer programming, you can be artistic real early. So I found that fascinating. And I was wondering, why do we only have this one class at the end? It was basically for seniors. It was AP CSA. And it was like, if they were interested in programming, they could take this class and, whatever happened. And I was like, this is very strange. In the math world, we have all kinds of classes that lead up to AP Calculus. And I was like, we don't have any classes that lead up to AP CSA. And people say that the AP CSA test is as hard as the AP Calculus test. It's like, so something wasn't working here in my mind. It was like, this doesn't make sense. We should have pathways that lead up to AP CSA. And so with my principal, she'll be here in a little while, we decided to push for becoming a computer science magnet and creating pathways for 9th graders to follow all the way up to AP CSA and AP principals. We were successful in doing that. This is our 2nd year as a magnet, and we have a requirement that I'd like to say all of our 9th graders have to take at least a semester of programming. it's 95% of our ninth graders right now. So it's not all, but the push is for all of them. And we use code.org to do the ninth grade kind of like introduction into programming. I saw Aaron here. Aaron's from CMU. We also partnered with CMU to offer the Python programming course, the CS1 Python programming. For our magnet students, that's their intro course, is the Python programming course. And so the ninth graders that enter into the magnet as ninth graders take the Python course, and that course has extensions and things like that. So that actually takes them 2 years into the ninth and 10th grade into the magnet. I mentioned the pathways, and so we actually have pathways that go from, for anybody, they can go from ninth grade code.org into 10th grade Python. So these are non-magnet students. And then in 11th grade, they can make a choice. They can go into intro to Java, and that's in 11th grade. It's really an APCSA course, but watered down so that they can get the feel of the APCSA course and then take the APCSA course in 12th grade, and the likelihood of passing, or at least this is what we believe. We're only in the second year of the magnet. So the likelihood of passing the APCSA exam greatly increases, having been exposed to Java in 11th grade.
Okay.
So that's the one pathway. The other pathway is more a broader approach. And so it's in 11th grade, those kids, if they don't want to do strictly programming, they can do a whole plethora of things. They can do web design and apps and gaming and things like that in 11th grade, and then follow that up with AP principles in 12th grade.
Okay.
So that's our pathways. Let's see, I kind of want to just kind of jump to something else here.
Sure.
What I'm noticing is that, so we have the pathways, we have the structure to be able to introduce programming to a lot of kids. But what I'm noticing, the thing that I want to work on is that there's a cultural difference. There seems to be a male-female cultural difference in terms of, like, do you want or do you love programming? And for whatever reason, the boys, I'm going to call them boys, the boys seem to be like, this is the place that's meant for them. Like, they're comfortable here. They want to program. They have their own little way of talking about it and interacting, and they feel very comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
For some reason, culturally, the girls don't feel that way. I have to be very deliberate to make them comfortable, but it's not like it's a naturally comfortable space for them. And so I have to work on getting the girls to be comfortable and wanting to follow up and follow through with the, staying with programming. Literally this year, again, because of the COVID interruption, I blame part of that on that when we closed, but I had 12 girls lined up that I was going to introduce into Java programming as juniors. Only 2 followed through. And I was like, man, right? And I was able to talk to some of the other girls, and they were like, they just weren't feeling it. And it's like, but I didn't give it a chance. It's like, I had them as sophomores, and I really felt like if they would have given it a chance, they would have gotten into it. But because I didn't have the personal connection with them, the schools were closed and things like that, they just fell through the cracks. So I feel like that was a missed opportunity. But I did take their comments to heart. They said they weren't feeling it, whereas I just like never heard that from boys. Okay. Boys just never say I'm not.
I want to touch on that again in a broader sense. I definitely want to, and I say that because I think about what the why of this particular panel, this discussion, right? This idea around CS for inclusion. But if we could take us a step backwards, because you went into depth, both of you kind of went into depth about like how computer science was introduced, at your school, and where and how it's progressed. So if we could just take one step back, and I want to ask this question of both of you. How did you decide? It seems, no, let me rephrase this. Is the decision to broaden computer science, to introduce it at some level, and then to broaden its access at another level was very, very strategic, right? What I'm hearing from you, it was a strategic move. Can you tell us a little bit about like how you came across that? How did you decide what goals you were going to set around computer science? And are there any tools that you use or used to assess whether or not, and to your point, Dave, around girls continuing to access it, like how do you assess the landscape of computer science in your school? So how did you go about the development of goals around your computer science? And then how are you assessing, what tools are you using to assess that whether or not that's the right thing to do?
Yeah, right. But
yeah.
If I can jump in, Kevin, feel free to jump in too. But if I can jump in, it was through workshops, right? Professional development. The notion of equity came up, and that just for me just strikes all kinds of chords, both in terms of gender and in terms of race. It's like, listen, you're gonna have to forgive me for what I'm about to say, but
I don't know. Watch it, Dave. Because I don't know.
Right. The education system's a little bit weird right now, in that it's very slow, very reluctant to recognize that it's biased, and it has a huge bias, and our kids can feel it all the time, but the adults don't seem to want to recognize it. To me, that's an injustice, and so wanting to extend computer science to everybody just kind of felt like a very natural path to me. It's like, this is something that, I mean, if you look at the opportunities in computer programming and, the job markets and all those kinds of things, it's certainly where, things are going. And it's like, so why aren't everybody who can potentially be in that area, in this realm, why aren't these people in this realm? Like, what's wrong here? What's wrong with this picture? And so it was that kind of wanting justice that propelled me to want to be very deliberate about breaking down barriers that would, prevent people from wanting to get into programming. How do I measure success? To me, it's enrollment. It's enrollment is the bottom line, but it's also outreach. Like, how many people are hearing about this? And then how many people are you retaining? And it's, just equity numbers there. And so, yeah, it's enrollment is the tool that I use for measurement.
Okay. Kevin.
So to piggyback, so one of the things about the level of being comfortable, like the student's comfort level, and I think it's important to set the tone right away that I don't care what your level of experience is. And we talk about this literally on every task that we do. So, if you have been coding since you were 5, great. If you've been coding for 5 minutes, great. Do what you're capable of doing in your little world, and everybody has, skills and tools that they're good at in this class. So build on those. If you're good at a certain thing, go with it. If you like a certain topic and you understand it and you can do wonderful things in that topic, then go with it. So, take your level of computer science and use it to your advantage, not as a disadvantage. Like, don't try things right off the bat if you're not comfortable with it, because the level of frustration is going to exceed what you're capable of doing. But the other thing is, if you like a certain topic, then code in that topic. Create, solve problems. Solve problems in the areas that you like. As far as measuring success goes, I think that the students are the biggest advocate. And like David, to piggyback what Dave said, your enrollment. So, I don't get on a megaphone and say, take computer science, but the kids do. So if they like my classes and they like the things that they're doing and they like doing things that they're interested in, then they take the class.
Kevin and Dave, one thing I would like, I want to push back on that, right? Because when Kevin Gallagher leaves, if And what's that for your computer? What's that for Keystone Oaks computer science program, right? If David Hairston leaves Brashear, what does that mean about the sustainability of that? And I don't want to call it an initiative, right? Because it should be something that's built in, especially I think both of you mentioned this idea around equity, that if the goal is to increase access to this very vital field, right, for all students, especially for Black and Brown students, and if we're talking about Brashear, right, because of the sheer numbers that you have there, and you're gone, and you are the sole one who is like the champion of the work, how are we going to do that? We need to, how do you put something
I think we're on the right track in that, you know, for me, I'm trying to create, I have left the math department and I'm trying to create my own department. And you know, I would like to see it sometime before I retire in the next 15 years or whatever, that, you know, English, math, science, social studies, computer science, that it sits at the table with the other four as the core subjects. And I think that, you know, there's no reason why it can't be that. You know, right now I have more or as many AP students as any other, you know, genre. So, you know, there's, you know, maybe 30 kids tops that take AP calculus at our school on a regular basis. I'm already at 2.5 times that as far as the number of students. And that's only in a short amount of time. Now we realize that there's only a finite number of students, but you can just, you know, the sustainability of it, I think, is hugely important to just continue to do the things that you're doing, generate the interest in the students, and have the students be your biggest advocate, and let them continue to spread it in a positive way and say, hey, take this, you know, when it's time for scheduling, it's a comfort to hear students say, hey, take this class. It's a fun class. You'll learn a lot, and you get to basically do whatever you want, you know, and learn computer science at the same time. So I think that's there's a whole lot of value in that as far as, you know, the sustainability of it, and looking for things to continue to grow, because I have students that as juniors have maxed out what I can give them, right? So they started young and they've maxed it out. So what else can I give them? So, you know, trying to branch outside, you know, and where else can computer science take you? And I think we can all attest to all of the data that we have looked at over the past 9 months, that, you know, that merging with statistics and continue to grow that. And that's my goal, is to, you know, take a language like Python that fits very well with, you know, statistics, and, you know, taking deep dives into data, that that maybe that's where we can continue to grow and become so big that nobody will take it away. You know what I mean? Like, so just continue to, you know, grow my own department, hire more teachers, and just make it a permanent seat at the table with the other students. I have a question in the chat about, scroll back for 1 second, that if Amina and John are still here, what convinced you to take computer science? Because I didn't. So if one of you are still here, both of you, so what convinced you to take it?
I'm walking to the bus stop.
Perfect.
But, I think just knowing, I think just the fact that you can create so many different just platforms and connect to so many different categories, even in the working field, like the sections, and connect to many people to help people to with as you're being creative. I think that's what's encouraging me to like computer science more. Yeah.
Okay. So, you know, one of the things that I think I heard earlier too, and I think I saw it expressed in the chat too, was around not just meeting students where they are, but exposing students to that thing that they can connect with, right? And I'm really very interested in finding out how to do that. How do we identify the thing that is going to attract the student to computer science in a way that it's going to be sustainable, in a way that they're going to want to continue, right? Because I want to ask the question as well, like, do you have such a goal where a percentage of your students will actually go into the computer science field as a teacher, right? Or, you know, at a computer programming company, like wherever that might be. And then how do we do that? How do we get them to do that? Especially when we're living, and I think you mentioned it as well, Dave, like we're living in a culture that doesn't necessarily value that for kids who look like my kids, who don't see that as valuable for kids who look like my kids, and for girls. It just isn't.
So if I can jump in here, I want to piggyback on what Kevin said. So I agree with everything he said, but I also want to add another element to it. And that is that the adults in my building aren't necessarily on board the way that I'm on board.
Talk about that, Dave.
And so I kind of feel like it's necessary for me to, at first, because of who I am, you know, just like beat the drum, computer science is the next big thing and everybody needs to be on board. That is one aspect of it. But the thing that I really want is I want the climate, I want to help the adults make the attitudinal change that we're not successful if we're not equitable. And equitable, I mean, it's just real easy. Look at our population and then look at where our population demographically ends up. Like what kinds of things are pushing some students in one area and pushing other students in another area? How does that happen? And it doesn't happen just because it happens. It's because it's the nature of our school that kind of gets kids, if you will, segregated into whatever, you know, they end up at a lot of times. And it's like that needs to be examined. And the adults control a lot of that. And I don't want to get too heavy or deep, but no. I want to help my adults understand that we, again, aren't successful if we can't recognize those barriers and then intentionally, you know, dismantle those barriers, take those things down so that our population, whatever it looks like, ending up in computer programming and AP calculus and other areas, and unlike the way the population is ending up now. And so, you know, that's a deliberate decision that the adults in the building have to make and want to embrace.
Yeah.
And so I think that to piggyback on that, David, it's a challenge, I will tell you, because, you know, I always say a lot of teachers teach how they learned, you know, and most of us growing up, when we started in kindergarten, the end goal was AP calculus, right? Everybody is going to take AP calculus. That's the end goal. And everything that you did from day one till, you know, the end was geared to get you to take calculus. So, you know, and now people are revolting because they don't understand that teachers are trying to get students to understand the math and not do it in a procedural way. They're trying to get a holistic approach to it, you know, and, you know, this new math, I guess you could call it. So I understand, you know, why that's there. But, you know, I think it's important. I'm just going to answer some questions too. We had, why would computer science persist without inclusion anyway? One of the things I do is, and you touched upon it, David, prerequisites are gone. I don't care what, if the kid wants to come and never take computer science before and they want to take CSA, take a shot. I don't care. You know,
why, Kevin?
Because I just think that if they're willing
in place to support that student,
if they're willing to try, I'm there. I will do whatever it takes to try to help them be successful. And one of our challenges is when you only have, like with the CSA course at our school, you only have one section of it. And it may only be offered, you know, this year it's, what do we call it? Third block, right? So, you know, it's difficult that for students to want to take it, or maybe that's the only time they can take it. And but they're still willing to try. I've had students, younger students go and take CSA, and then the following year, because they had more room in their schedule and it's offered more often, is to take a principal's class. So they're taking it, almost out of order, but it's fine because the main thing is, are they learning, the concepts of computer science? They're getting a couple different languages along the way. And whether they, become successful and pass an AP course or pass an AP test, that's kind of like icing on the cake. As long as they're learning computer science and they continue to grow, obviously, if they've taken an intro to Java course, they're going to be more successful, hopefully more successful in CSA. But at the same time, maybe they're a senior and maybe, they're only there a half a day because they have to go work somewhere. And the only class they can take is computer science A. So let's take a shot. So I think it's, the removal of prerequisites across the board. Now, I will suggest things if someone's a younger student that, if they have a limited amount of experience, I say, why don't you take, we offer computer science discoveries through code.org. Why don't you try that first? It's a semester course. We teach it as a semester course. See what you think. Or, if you're okay with it and you want to dive right into principles, go right into principles. If the option's there to take between principles and computer science A, and the student has the option, I would recommend principles first. It's a little more of a fun class, which I've heard from students.
Right.
It allows for a lot more. It allows for what we do solve a lot of different problems in Java and CSA, but the JavaScript, the way we teach it, allows for a little more creativity in the principles course.
If I could, so what I'm hearing now then is, I heard from both of you this idea around meet the student where she is, right? Allow opportunities, for students, and this idea around like it's the right thing to do. There are lots of right things that should be done in this world. Unfortunately, we don't always do them. So my question was going to be, and what I'm hearing you get at, and I'd like to kind of explore some more of those, or continue down that road, is when we, and I wrote this down, when our appeal to the morals of the adults in our building or in our district doesn't work, when that appeal doesn't work, what are the things that we need to make sure we have in place? So I hear one, Kevin, I hear you say this idea around the elimination of prerequisites, right? So we look at our curriculum to determine where are the barriers that are keeping students from exploring this as an option, and let's eliminate those. I hear also the idea, Dave, that you mentioned that Brashear did was, we've redesigned our entire program, right? We have made it, hi Kim, we have made it a computer science magnet, right? So we're building in the pathway to make sure that students have access to. But what I want to hear a little bit more though about is how do we align things? So I think an area that we've not talked about here is, yep, Kevin, we can eliminate certain prerequisites, but there are potentially still some state initiatives or some larger, like Department of Education, potential barriers that get in the way of students being able to do that. So I know, like with a magnet, you have the opportunity, I would assume, and so Kim Saffron is on the line. I'm going to ask her to introduce herself, and maybe you can address this question. Are there ways to appeal to a larger body, a policy-making body, that we can use to get more students involved in computer science? So Kim Saffron has joined us. Kim, if you might take a moment and introduce yourself, your name, the school district, your role, and then this idea of what drives you or what has driven you to advance computer science in your school, in your district as an administrator.
So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kimberly Saffron, and I am the principal at Brashear High School. And Brashear is a neighborhood school in Pittsburgh Public Schools. And of course, I'm sure Mr. Harrison also has been talking about our newly launched computer science magnet that we worked really hard on for about 8 years to get that to come to fruition. And we also are ESL center for the North and the South and the West of Pittsburgh. So our school is quite complex. And the work that we've done really to get computer science on the table is, I think Dave and I and the teachers that are really working on computer science at Brashear, we're just constant advocates for it. We have tried to connect with, our school board members to really make sure that they're informed when they're making policy decisions that affect the district about the importance of computer science. And for me personally, I've been trying to network more with all of the schools that feed into Brashear so that we can get that vertical alignment out there with those schools as well. It definitely is, it presents many challenges, I'd have to say, in getting that everyone on the same page.
Okay. And one of the program supports that NIMSY has introduced is our CS Align Ed math that we have, and so I think I saw in the chat an idea around teacher training, right, for this. Kevin, you talked about eliminating prerequisites, but we cannot dismiss the fact that there are certain core foundational skills that students need to have to be successful in these courses, right? And so I don't know, Kimberly, can you talk a little bit about, like, when you go to your neighborhood schools and you're having those vertical alignment conversations, what that sounds like to make sure that those students are not only interested in computer science to come to Brashear, but also like truly prepared for success when they get there? Or what you're doing. Maybe you're still in the works. I understand it's still in the works, but like, what are we putting in place, I guess is my question.
So we really worked to get the schools that feed into ours on board with code.org so that they were doing computer science discoveries as well on the middle school level. So we did have, I know that Langley Middle School, got involved with the process, and they're working on implementing that on their school level, so that we'll have more students coming to Brashear that will be prepared for our CS work that we're planning. And we have students, we're trying to have all students also at Brashear take computer science discoveries at the 9th grade level. And we modify that as based on the students' skill sets when they enter the course as well. So last year we had every single student take the course, and we had some hits and we had some misses with it. We modified it a little bit this year, where we really had to pull some students out of it because we were finding that a lot of students didn't want to take the course and weren't prepared for it as well. So that's how we changed the focus a little bit this year.
Okay. And I think
can I add to that a little bit? So
please, Kevin.
We've moved to a half a credit requirement for computer science. So, I've seen way more positives than good. I would tell you that last year, the back row in my lab, when labs once existed in the world, in the back row of my lab, I had 5 life skills students with 3 paraprofessionals back there, and we were coding. It was one of the coolest moments of my entire career. I don't know if I'll ever top it, as far as that interaction and learning that was going on, not only with the students, but with the paraprofessionals who were learning computer science as well, which was kind of cool. But in addition to that, I think that starting slow is important. I don't necessarily agree with, picking students to take courses. I understand that there is issues there, but I think that, starting slow, I think that, one of the original,
when you say starting slow, what does that look
one
like?
of the original goals with AP Computer Science Principles was to not make it a coding course right off the bat.
Okay.
Let's learn about stuff that the students are comfortable with, like the internet. Let's learn about the internet first. And let's learn about, just basic computer knowledge that every single person has some of, at least they think they do, right? So start slow, and then all of a sudden start sneaking the programming in, right? So that's what did it. Now, the curriculum has changed a little bit in that you're slowing to start slow is a little more difficult. However, it can still be done. And I think as long as you allow the students to work at their own pace in the concepts that you are, I tell them all the day, your goal is not to make Snapchat or Facebook today in class, right? Your goal is to make a simple function that does one thing. That's it. You're not trying to get 1 billion followers in 5 minutes, right? So your goal is to start very, very basic in your level and succeed, what baby steps at a time. Other students, I'm like, go, just keep going and going and going. I'm not going to slow you down. Just keep going, and I'll help you along the way too. And every day we have students that are a couple tasks behind. We have students that are supposed to be, and I have students that are ahead. And I said, I'm going to help everybody, right? One of the biggest benefits of this platform is that, I have everybody, we have GoGuardian at Keystone Oaks. I can see everybody's screen on a daily basis, whether they're here, there, anywhere, and I'm helping them with computer science, all day long. And, there are certain days where I go home and I'm spent because it's just constant. The customer service that we are providing in this day and age is something that we are constantly helping students solve problems on an individual basis. So I wanted to answer one more question from Shannon.
Yep.
And Shannon's was...
Thank you for monitoring the chat, Kevin.
Oh, you're good.
Awesome.
Perception. So we, through this 4-year experience, I've met a lot of people.
I'm sorry. Can you read off the question? I just want to make sure that everybody.
It says, I wonder if some of it is perception. In general, populations think of computer scientists as guys who hide in the dark in their basement, right? So and I don't know, I stole this analogy from somebody, and I apologize for copyright purposes, but you bring a jar of gumballs into a room and you ask all the guys, how many gumballs are there? And they get it wrong. Then you bring the girls in, right? And they get it wrong. And then you bring different ethnicities and different races and different diverse groups of people in, and they continue to get it wrong. However, if you take the average of all of their answers together, it's correct. And I just think that analogy is so important to realize. And, this is not just coming from me. I visited FedEx and talked about what they're doing at FedEx, and they're looking for diverse groups of people because they understand that analogy. If all those different backgrounds come together, that's where the absolute best solution is. And I think that is, a simple example, and I give credit to the person that I stole from, and I don't remember who it was so long ago, but I just think that just makes so much sense to me, that because I teach statistics too, and it's not always about, every time you take a trial, you get what you're supposed to get. But if you take the average of those trials, and it doesn't take long to do that, 30 people or less, you're there. You have what is expected, and you have the solution to the problem. And I think that, and I talk about this all the time in my classes, that you don't have to be that person that sits in the basement with their headphones on and codes all day. There's still a need for those people, but most of the people in today's society will sit around the table, and you're going to have, at that table will be the computer scientists, will be the people in charge of marketing, will be people in charge of the money. And all of those people need to understand computer science, and because that's what's going to solve the problems, right? The human mind, how great it is too slow in 2020. It needs to be faster than fast. And the only way to do that is machines to do it for us, to keep up with society. And I think that's important that, you visualize this. And when the world was open, normal, we saw some of this where people sitting around collaborating with different backgrounds and different expertises, and they're coming together, and, they're solving the problem. We went to FedEx last year, and the problem, they were trying to roll out going from 6 days to 7 days of shipping, right? Mm-hmm. and all of the things that went into that, from the marketing aspect of it to the business act of it to the physical labor aspect of it. And, you know, one of the things that was driving it all was, you know, the ability to, you know, you had to have some computer scientists there to, you know, make it work. But you also had to have the people that understood the computer science, that weren't doing the coding, that could have conversations. And that's what courses like CSA and CSP are about, and CS Discoveries is, you may not be this person that hacks all night long, but you need to be able to have a conversation with that person. So you have an idea to solve a problem, you give the problem to that person, and the next morning you have your answer to the problem, and you can communicate that to the masses, whether that's a business plan or a marketing plan or, you know, whatever. And I think that's, and everybody is capable of, everybody has skills within them that can contribute to that conversation. And I think we're not like I said, not everybody is going to create Snapchat overnight, but you might be talking to the person that's going to create Snapchat, and you might have the great ideas to create something like Snapchat or Facebook. And, you know, you have extreme value in that, or, you know, the marketing aspect of it, or the whatever. Good.
Well, I'm saying what I hear you saying though, again, right, is finding out like what their niche, like what their interest is, or their niche, and making that connection with computer science, and so that they then they want to become interested in it. You know, Kimberly and David, I wanted to ask you each a little bit. I think each of you sort of touched on it a little bit, but if you could elaborate a little bit more on, or talk a little bit about how you, as with anything in education, it's really important to engage our families and our larger communities in order for them to sort of see the connection there as well. How has Brashear, how has Pittsburgh Public Schools engaged, you know, this idea of family and community engagement as it relates specifically to computer science? Or have you seen it, and or like where would you hope it would be? Either of you, David or Andrew.
Well, I'm going to jump in. Kimberly's going to do a much better job at it, but I'm just going to say, I think with computer science, we're kind of at our infancy in terms of getting the community and, you know, parents and other people aware and involved. Our computer science magnet, I saw a comment in the chat where Brashear a while back was a computer science magnet. I'm not completely up on how that was lost or why that was lost, but again, our new computer science magnet is just 2 years in the making, and, you know, we definitely do outreach. We definitely, you know, go to the fairs and those kinds of things. We make people aware of it, but we're just in the initial, I feel like we're just in the initial infancy stages of, you know, community outreach. I did want to mention one other thing, and there's a temporal nature to growing a program, right? So there, you know, we're in the growing stage, but there is also a kind of steady state that we want to get to. In the steady state, with, you know, what we do in the steady state's a little different than what we're doing right now. And so while we're in the growing stage, I just want to mention that, you know, Kevin mentioned like there's no barriers, and I want to say that's right. In the growing stage, nobody's getting turned away. We don't want to do that. And even in the steady state stage, we don't want to turn anybody away. But what we're hoping for is that in the steady state stage, we also have this natural pipeline, that we've created this natural feed of kids who are going to be exposed. And so we're not going to be as dependent on, you know, hoping that, you know, people are interested in and fall into it. There's going to be this intentional, deliberate, you know, stream of people that are going to be coming into the program. So we'll never turn anybody away, but we're also building, hopefully we're building a very solid pipeline into our program. So I wanted to say that, and the temporal nature of the program. So, you know, what we look like in 5 years will be different than the way we operate now. I also want to get back to equity. It's very important that in 5 years, we recognize all the cultural biases and everything else that will pull kids in different directions, and get our goal to be that 50% or somewhere around that number, the people that are involved in computer science programming are female. 50% of the population is female. So what gravity is pulling them away from
So
programs?
that's your measure. Is that your measure for you, David? Is that your measure of success of your program?
That for me personally,
for you, yeah, for you.
And I want to codify that so that, you know, again, it looks like that in the whole CS department in the magnet, right? 50% or some number around there. I hate, you know, it's got to be 50%. And if you get 49.8, it's like you failed or whatever. But right, but yeah, some number that says that there's no cultural bias in our program that's pulling people away from this field, you know, like they don't feel like they belong here. And so that's a very important part. Our program should look transparent in terms of, you know, the students who come to the school, a certain number of them following the population are going to end up in computer science. And there shouldn't be anything that says, you know, but all the girls are going to go over there and then all the black kids are going to go over there, right? They should feel like, rather our program should be very deliberate in terms of pulling people into the program that reflect the diversity of the communities that we're drawing from.
And I think that's what removing prerequisites, because you have students that, you know, historically may only make it to geometry algebra 1 or maybe some algebra 2, right? And if you have a rule that states you can't take computer science until you pass algebra 2 or something insane like that, right? Then you're immediately eliminating, you know, that's a ginormous barrier for schools. And we, even at Keystone Oaks, that was the initial intent, is that we're going to allow students to take these courses as long as they have passed algebra 2. But that was immediately thrown to the side because we had all these students that wanted to try, and that barrier was there. So we removed that barrier. And I think that, you know, connecting computer science, that if it's taught by a math teacher or taught by a science teacher, to allow them to get math and science credit in Pennsylvania is huge, because that makes your course immediately relevant. Because we all have a math wall, right, that we hit somewhere in our life. You know, some of us hit it at algebra 1, some of us hit it at, you know, calc 3, whatever. But at some point, if you hit that math wall, now I'm like, maybe your math wall is algebra 2. I don't want to take trig, right? What am I doing this to myself, right? I'm going to sit there and learn about stuff that I don't want to learn about. I don't know what's going on. I'm just memorizing and memorizing and memorizing for the test. And then, you know, you have students that have escaped that, and all of a sudden, it's like the grass is green, the flowers are blooming. You know, it all makes sense to them, and they're loving it. Like they they like, you know, whatever, you know, and they're getting to do that and get a math credit or a science credit for it or whatever.
I appreciate that you bring up that idea around, like, what's our return on investment, right? So why do we have these things in place if we're not getting the outcomes that we want, our desired outcomes, and sort of examining that and identifying other avenues. I have one more question I want to ask, and I want to ask it of you, Kimberly, and then I would like to open it up. I think there are some questions in the chat that we have addressed and some that we haven't. So after this last question, I would like to open it up for anybody who has a question in the chat that hasn't been asked to come off mute and voice their question for us before we close out. So Kimberly, my question to you is, so, you know, the National Math and Science Initiative, or NMSI's objective, is to partner with schools and districts to help impact culture that will open access to advanced college and career readiness opportunities for all students. How have you seen this play out in your school? That is, what partnerships, or how have you seen partnerships like yours with NMSI help you advance those initiatives?
Okay, so the partnership with NMSI, wow, it was a long time ago too. So we were one of the first schools in Pittsburgh Public, but it really helped us create that culture, that AP culture at first year that we wanted for all of our students. So we still have as a goal for all of our students, since the work that we began with NMSI, for all students to graduate taking at least one AP student course, AP course. So in actuality, does every single student take an AP course? No, but it's still a goal for our school. We've continued to see that the partnership has allowed us to create courses for and offer more courses for students. So students would come to us with interest in a specific area, and we'd work to, generate enough interest amongst the student body so that we could also offer that additional course to them. And I would have to say that the training for teachers was invaluable for all of our AP teachers with partnering with NIMSY. And it's something that we actually are continuing to gain from the NIMSY partnership. Our teachers participate in professional learning, and that really contributes to our culture because it's a lot about the messaging that goes out there to kids, and that continued professional learning allows for that messaging to students that you can access this course and you can be successful in it. So I would say that's the biggest takeaway for our school, is that continued messaging. And it was great to see teachers that thought that only students with A's could take AP kind of rethink their thinking about that. Yeah.
Yeah. I think, everybody has mentioned the idea around the mindset of the adult in the building, how valuable that is. So I think you're right. Like this, having that shift in mindset around who can take whatever course it is, be it a computer science course or any other course, an advanced type of course, I think is.
We went from 75 AP exams prior to NIMSY to 289 in 3 years.
That's crazy.
Driven, a lot. Computer science helped, obviously, and what's nice about it is, it opened the door. NIMSY opened the door for computer science at school. I mean, remember the story, and my curriculum director who was here, Dr. Varley, you're going to teach, we're getting NIMSY next year, and you are going to teach computer science principles. Okay. So like any human in 2016 or whatever year that was, what is computer science principles and how do I teach it, right? I literally Googled that. I clicked on code.org, and, next thing you know, I was at a conference with 500 other teachers that clicked the same button as me. And their mission is very similar to NIMSY's, where it's about equity, it's about opportunity, it's about, what can you create? And, they trained 1,500 teachers in the summer, and that reached 50,000 students. And code.org had 1 million girls log on, in like 3 years. So that was, a pretty extraordinary thing to be a part of. It went right along, like right place at the right time with, meeting the National Math and Science Initiative and code.org at the same time. It really was a great match for me, and the people that benefited the most is my students. And like I said, we quadrupled the amount of AP exams we administered in 3 years. We continued to thrive. Computer science was a huge benefactor of that. And we continue to, like I said, we have 80 AP kids right now, which is more than 2.5 times what calculus has.
Okay, thank you, Kevin. So now I'd like to open it up to folks who are on the call. If there's a question that you have posed in the chat that hasn't been answered and you'd like to voice that, or I would like for you to voice that, or if there's a question that hasn't been posed in the chat, would like you, and I'll give you an opportunity to voice that now. Latrenda, is there any special way that I should do this?
Excuse me. No, I was thinking that I would, just let everyone know you can unmute yourself. And if you want to ask a question, just go ahead.
There was a question, I saw a question in here around, Penny asked the question, and I think, Kevin, you started to answer it in the chat here. The question that Penny poses is, do you encourage student experts to help in the community of coders in your classes? how do you,
Hi, here's Penny. If you want me to
oh,
kind of
yes,
explain
thank
my
you,
question a
Penny.
bit more.
Yes.
Thanks for the pop-up of unmute yourself. So I am very familiar with code.org. I'm actually a facilitator for professional development. However, my background is early childhood elementary. So I come from a slightly different perspective, creativity and fun being, again, very resounding for that level. So one of the things when I work with teachers in our school districts who are very reticent to kind of just dip that toe even in the shallow end to get started, because they have that mindset where I can't do computer science, I don't know computer science, as you've already said, to make it really fun. So when I have students working with who have very little experience or no experience, and they begin with something like code.org or Hour of Code activities, or we do something more complex, one of the things that I let the teachers know is you don't have to know everything. In fact, we don't want you to know everything. It's up to the kids to figure things out. So we do highlight the quote unquote expert students in the room. And one of the things I tell my teachers, and I don't know if folks are not familiar with code.org, but they require pair programming. 2 students with 1 device, 1 computer. They take turns as the driver or the navigator. So 2 brains are thinking, 1 person's typing, the other person's debugging, checking. The navigator's doing a lot more, I think, sometimes than the typer's doing. And so as that sort of gels out, we find a few experts in the room, and that may or may not relate to the amount of experience they've had, but more their own computer science mindset of how much they enjoy it, how they like the problem solving. So I tell my teachers, you don't have to know everything. Get started, because the kids who are paired together, they're responsible for figuring it out. First, it's up to them. You're not going to solve their problem, their issue. They're not the problem that they're trying to solve.
Right.
The second place they go to is other experts in the room. If they can't do it together, and again, we're doing it as a business model. I joke with my students and I would say, when you get a job and the boss gives you something to do, you don't go ask your boss for the answer. You're supposed to bring the answers to your boss. So getting kids to understand more authentic how to work collaboratively with the general team in the room. So getting them to go ask other students who are the experts. So just wondering how that might be playing out in what you're seeing in your classes.
Okay.
I mean, like I mentioned in the chat, we do a lot of virtual groups. I did use pair programming. It's kind of on hold right now. I think right now the pair programming exists in these virtual groups where you can basically hit a button and send your kids out into 4, 5, 6, 7 groups, and give them a task, and then you see when I jump into those little meets, you see the experts take over, but you always hear the people that are the kids that are just starting to learn. They always have something, on a simpler level to bring to the problem. And a lot of times that simple solution, drives the discussion. It's not so much the expert. The experts there can kind of, you have these facilitators within, you're facilitating, and then you have these facilitators throughout the room that are various levels of experience and that kind of help out, kind of try to bring everybody along. And again, one of the biggest advantages of being in this world right now is you can see progress a lot easier than, walking around a lab or, because I can see who's, struggling, and I can send them a message and say, hey, what do you need? Do you need code? Do you think, because I tell them one of the reasons that drove me long time ago, drove me out of computer science was syntax, right? Mm-hmm. Semicolons and capitalization and things that were so frustrating to me. And I don't let that is not computer science. Don't let that slow you down. If I have to, I'll fix every one of those mistakes for you or tell you how to fix them. You need to worry about, principles of the language that you're learning, and don't get caught up whether you forgot a semicolon or not. Like, that'll be fair. That's not the problem. Okay. Mm-hmm. It's the red blocks that you need to be concerned with, not the yellow triangles in code.org. So, you know, and I think that, you know, again, trying to ease frustrations and you can do this kind of stuff on a regular basis. And it doesn't take long. Like, and the next thing you know, I don't hear from a student. I'm like, what's going on? They're like, oh, I got it. Great. You know, and that's as rewarding as it gets.
I wonder, Lewis, do you mind voicing your question that you asked? Maybe provide some more context to it? Oh, no, he's gone. Oh, no, there he is.
Hello?
Yeah, there we are. Hi.
Oh, fantastic.
Great.
Sorry about that. Yeah, so I actually had a couple, but the original question was, excuse me for my sound. The original question is, are the school types, structures, do they provide any barriers, or does the structure make the end goal harder to achieve? Meaning that you can't allow people are going to need to have at least some some minimum level of understanding in order to get through. I imagine a magnet school, the way it will be measured at the end will be not only how many people are taking the exam, but how are they doing on the exam. But I'll leave that to the experts here. It's just one of my questions.
I like that question.
Can I get clarification on your question? So were you asking like the school structures? So could you just elaborate on that a little bit more?
Sure.
Say more about
well, the different types of schools, their structure, whether it's magnet, non-magnet, etc. Do those provide any impediments when you say I want students to come in and not have a minimum understanding and I can develop it? Is that realistic in all the structures? And does it also set some students up if the teacher doesn't have the skill that you both gentlemen seem to have to make sure that the students don't feel that they're in over their head and they're failing and therefore they just give up on themselves, particularly in how that may play out by gender?
Wow, that's a pretty deep question.
I wanted Lewis to come off mute. That's exactly why I wanted him to voice it.
So, and I'm going to answer it in a broader sense. I don't know that there's a specific school structure that's creating the barrier. I feel like it's more of a larger cultural structure, that cultural phenomena that kind of infects the schools, right? And so I kind of feel like there's a culture that we all have biases, we all have preconceptions and those kinds of things. And I kind of feel like that is in every school. And so it's not the school structure that's the bias or the problem. To me, it's just a kind of a question of really just equity, just across the board in society. You know, if we're not deliberate in trying to enforce equity across the board in society, that's also going to show up in school. So I think, you know, if you want to talk about a structure in schools, you could ask the question, are the schools doing a good enough job of deliberately knocking down barriers, whatever, you know, but definitely around gender and race. And so, but that's not specific to any one type of school, that's all schools.
So I don't disagree with you. Yes, when I think, and I think about, I think it's Kevin, and his school structure seems to be, and in the way he's running his program, he is really allowing the student to drive, and he's really tying in their passion, and he has the skill set to help them feel comfortable no matter where they're at, but the passion is being aligned to the topic. You're doing the same thing, but I wonder if a magnet school, because it's a magnet school, has some other expectation, particularly as you mentioned, you're year 2 in, presumably 2 years away from the end goal. So I'm wondering, are there things performance-wise, is there an unstated expectation to perform that may not allow to have more students without the stereotypical skills to Kevin talked about algebra 1, 2, and 3. So do the school environments play into this some way? And yes, I agree with you that there are any numbers of biases and micro inequities across all the cultures, but do the school structure itself impedes that? And then our selection of students, just much like Kevin and you both were chosen for different reasons, or probably the same reasons because your impact, how we select the teachers in the room, is that impacting or can potentially stop people from being interested, particularly gender, women?
So Lewis, interestingly enough, we had an additional panelist who was scheduled who could not attend. And when it did not escape me as I looked on the screen and was sort of preparing for this with Kevin and this other panelist, that they were two white men, and we were going to be talking about inclusion in computer science. And I said, we have to address that, right? So I would wonder too, I think similar to what you're saying, not just for the student, but even for the teacher, are there barriers? Is that a barrier, right, to computer science? If we're looking for students to see themselves in this field, and their teacher is and their teacher is an influencer, and that teacher does not necessarily share their gender, their culture, their background, how does that influence it? And what are the steps that we're taking as administrators, as folks who want to see this happen, to affect that teacher pool, right? How are we getting more Black and brown CS teachers? How are we getting more women CS teachers in front of our students to affect that cultural shift that potentially addresses what you're saying, David, as well, around the biases that are inherent in the educational setting? And I think, I don't know, Latrenda, that might be another session for us.
Well, I guess my last comment to that, when I listened to your introduction,
Yeah.
Muriel, you described the 70s and 80s being in a single gender environment, which was a very empowering,
Yes,
so much empowering that you decided to do it from high school to college. So, and that seems to have, really helped you out. And I'm wondering.
And it was intentional that I started that way, Lewis. You know that, right? That was very intentional. Yeah.
Lewis, you kind of broached, for me at least, you made me think about this idea of this idea of, a student might not be worthy, like you're in a magnet, but do you belong here? Can you really code? If that ever becomes like anything at Brashear, that's got to go, right? I mean, that just has no place. Programming is such a wonderful field because it really is something that anybody can do. And as Kevin has mentioned, if you allow people to show an interest, they can grow from where they're at. There's no you need to have attained a certain level to be a programmer. And so this notion, at least what you made me think of, for kids, that you're not worthy or something like that, that has no place. And I don't see that, by the way, right now at Brashear. And so I don't see any kind of, institutional, you have to be a certain kind of level of kid to be a successful kid in programming. So I don't feel that or see that just yet. But the other question, Muriel, that you brought up, how do you attract the teachers and things like that? Right, I mean, that's another temporal question. I mean, hopefully if we graduate these kids the way we want, then it solves itself, right? Because we'll hire them.
Yeah, but I don't want it to be a hopefully, David. I honestly don't want. I want us to have a plan in place. I want us to have
Right.
right, so that we can see the success. Sorry, that's just me, you know.
No, no. Well, so I'm not mad. I don't disagree with you at all. I'm going to use that word deliberate again. But I'm stepping out of I'm a teacher. I don't hire people, but I would say that the hiring and the seeking has to be deliberate. And I'm going to use this phrase, and it's going to maybe rile some people up. I don't know, but you also have to be courageous enough to want to maybe make a hire that, people are going to be mad at you, because it's like, yeah, but you had all these other, and I'm going to use this, you had all these other guys waiting to get hired, and you went off and hired this lady that nobody knows, right? And it's like, yeah, yeah, those guys will get jobs, no problem. But I need this lady in this job in this moment, because it's bigger than just, getting the teacher. It's also getting there's a structural component to the faces that we put in front of our kids. And so you might have to be courageous enough to want to deliberately put, a particular face in front of particular kids. So again, that could be controversial.
Right.
I think that my hope is, my hope is that, with these changes that we've been making these last few years and continue to make, that maybe one of the end results are maybe not everybody goes and becomes a computer scientist or sits at the table with marketing, but maybe they go, you know what, I really like this in high school. I'd like to teach this, right? So you start to see, these increased numbers in females and different diverse groups that, they go to college and, maybe they major in education and minor in computer science, and they turn around and come right back into the school and teach. And maybe they go to Brashear, maybe they go to Keystone Oaks, and maybe, we all walks of life, maybe that's where this is headed. So that's got to help, when I know that, when the number of computer science students that have increased over the last few years is astronomical, right? So let's hope that, maybe we haven't seen this yet. Maybe that's coming in 4 or 5 years when these students graduate from college. Maybe they're going to come around and like, hey, I really like those courses that Mr. Harrison and Mr. Gallagher were teaching. And I could do that. And maybe we'll see that, hopefully we'll see that maybe they may not go work for FedEx or this firm or that marketing firm or that business, but maybe they'll turn around and come right back into teaching to do that. One of the things that, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, Kimberly. Sorry.
Kimberly has something to say, sorry.
Yeah, I just wanted to share that I just kind of had an aha moment after hearing what Lewis was saying and what Mr. Harrison and Muriel were saying. But our computer science department at Brashear, so it's a newly created department, it's 2 female teachers and 2 male teachers, and Mr. Harrison being the only person of color. But when I think about our department, something that this aha moment I just had is that my female teachers are really focusing on those introductory courses and more of the creative kind of courses where students get to do a little bit of robotics and, making things as well. And I'm wondering if there's some shuffling there, around, and like, that we can maybe get more of those females into the upper level courses where they could see a person like them and they feel more comfortable. Tackling those courses.
Yeah, and that's what I mean too, around like, I don't want it to be maybe if always. I want to what the point that you made too, Kimberly, around setting, really setting some goals and putting things in place to be able to impact those, to impact that end. We have one more question from Colleen, and then and we're gonna we're gonna thank everyone and close out. But Colleen.
Well, you're limiting me. I have 2 questions.
Oh, uh-oh. 2
I
questions.
better prioritize.
No, 2 questions. Well, you can ask both your questions.
All right, thank you. Before I ask my question, I'm going to even be bolder, and I just wanted, Kimberly, I liked how you were talking about maybe flip-flopping, and I was wondering if there's a way to think maybe even creatively so that it's not such a defined role, but that maybe it's shared roles so that all of the females and the teachers of color and whatever other dynamics a person might bring to a role, they might split a course so that sometimes they're teaching part of the upper level. And so I know it's not likely your school structure, but might that allow for kind of the depth and the breadth to show that everybody can do all of these things. And it also might bring in some ways of teaching the upper levels that allow some more of that hands-on and creativity to creep in to firm that up. So I couldn't resist that, spitting out that thought. My first question is, when you talk about being strategic and wanting to be very deliberate in seeing change happen, what role, if any, are any of you taking at this time to engage in developing sort of a feeder system? So what role are you using with your high school students to go into middle school, elementary, or work with middle school and elementary teachers to help those younger students get engaged with coding, get engaged with computer science in ways that will help them to develop an identity early on so they can begin to see themselves as computer scientists or having the potential to experience computer science and coding at a higher level?
Yeah. Anybody want to address that, Kimberly? Maybe I think because you're, yeah.
Well, first, I really appreciate the suggestion of that shared role. I'm definitely going to think about that and think about how we could go about doing that. I think that would be a great opportunity for all of our teachers. So thank you for sharing that. And then the other is, yes, we do have our students go out and visit, especially our attached middle school, South Hills, and they share the work that they're doing and show them some coding opportunities and things. I have to say that type of work has been put on hold a little bit this year because we've really been struggling with just managing e-learning for our students. But I think it's a great idea to maybe get kids reconnected to e-learning, to offer that to students. Like, we want you to share what you're learning with other students.
To piggyback on that and to address your question, we also are fortunate at Brashear that we're also a teaching magnet. And so we actually have a teaching program, and in normal years, the students go to elementary schools and they teach alongside teachers. But that's an excellent model for us as well. I use a lot of things that come from the teaching magnet. The CS magnet uses a lot of those things as well. And one of the ideas is that our programmers do that same thing, that we go out to the elementary schools, our programmers, and so they become the faces of, what people can imagine as programmers. So we're not relying on industry to give us faces or NIMSY to give us faces. Our students can be those faces, and they would act in roles similar to what the student teachers are doing in the teaching magnet. So
absolutely,
I just want to put it out there.
That's great to hear. Yeah, that near peer has much more power in the role model category. So that's awesome. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Colleen, was that both your questions, or?
Nope, that was just one.
Oh, okay, that's what I thought. Okay, I didn't think the first one was a question. I thought it was just a statement. Yep, go ahead.
Oh, this one is a question, guys, as an appeal, guys, is a question, but it is, are any of you aware of and engaged with NC WIT's affiliate with the Award for Aspirations in Computing? NC WIT is the National Center for Women in Information Technology, and we have an affiliate chapter for Western Pennsylvania. There are high school awards for girls who are engaging in computing, and there are educator awards for educators who support those young women. And so the appeal is, if you're not tuned into that you tune into it in the future, both as educators and for your students. And the secondary appeal is that if this is of interest to you, our local affiliate committee would love to have the engagement from across the region. So question/appeal. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Colleen. Thank you. Thank you. Well, I want to thank everyone for being on the call this afternoon. David, Kevin, Kimberly, Amina, Abshana, I want to thank all of you as well for taking your time out this afternoon to participate in this panel. And you have been great partners with NIMSY, and I want to, applaud all of the work that you have been doing at your schools, in your districts, and wish you continued success, and want to just let everyone know if there are any, if other ideas that you have. I know LaTrenda collects all of that, and want to make sure that we're all sharing our best practices and tools and resources that we have. So again, Colleen, I want to thank you for sharing that around the organization. And I will now hand it over to LaTrenda. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. And so now I have to figure out, I have all of these spotlights up because of each of you. So totally thank you for sharing the work that you're doing. I mean, I think it is inspiring. I think we have such a long way to go around most of this work. And so I'm just grateful that each of you were here today. I would like to point out something that I don't know if everyone noticed, right? But Mr. Hairston had a picture in the background, and it was a picture of George Floyd in the background. I don't know if anyone else noticed that.
Oh, I noticed. I did. I definitely did.
But when we really think about inclusion, when we really think about this work consistently, right, we need to really consider the contextual factors that lead people to not be a part of this conversation, that lead students to not want to participate in this work, that leave students feeling, excluded, right, and feeling like it's not for them, right? And so CS for Inclusion is more than just computer science. Right? This is really looking at how do we get to know young people, affirm young people, and then say to them you belong here too. And I believe that you belong here too. And so thinking about what Kevin expressed, let's remove some barriers, right? Thinking about what Mr. Harrison expressed about specifically we can't be successful if we're not equitable. So I don't want to hear any numbers about success if we're not considering equity on the front end. And so I really just want us to take some of that into account. I think we have some solid partners in this region that want to make this work and that want to do this properly. And so please, we will send out at the end of the series just a bunch of different resources on computer science and inclusion, basically that we've received from the chats. Also, we will have this recording available as well for all of the, for anyone, who wants it, but we'll definitely make sure we send it out to you. Did want to just share a couple things that we have coming up and wanted to make sure you're aware of them. Our next, so keep trying to share my screen and there it is. Okay. Our next conversation is with Dr. Richard Purcell of CMU. He's a professor at CMU, but he really does a lot to bring a lot of these conversations together, centering race, and then talking about all of these other factors. And so he is a solid person to learn from. We're just going to listen to him give a historical overview, really, of computer science, the historical implications of where computer science is going, but also thinking about some inclusion tactics that we can use when we're sharing some things with our young people. And then we also have a tweet chat coming up with Hip Hop Ed. I don't know if you all are familiar, but Hip Hop Ed does some fabulous work in education. And they are going to be facilitating a conversation about computer science and hip hop. It's pretty late because that's the time when folks are on Twitter chatting with the Hip Hop Ed community. So we decided to have it at 9 p.m. on December 8th. If you want to join us, please let us know. We're going to send out all of the directions to participate in the tweet chat. But so grateful to have each of you here today to chat with us. And again, we'll make this available for you post the conversation, okay? So thank you all for joining, and just, you know, let's think about how we can include more young people in computer science.